Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. In today's video, we're diving into a heartwarming chapter of Yuri and Tutu's journey. A moment where, after surviving countless storms, they finally taste the peace and happiness they once thought they'd never reach. What happens when two broken hearts finally find a home in each other and in their newborn child? Stay tuned to find out. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. The room was bathed in a warm, golden glow, the kind of light that made everything feel softer, gentler, almost unreal. Uri and Tutu stood together beside the tiny cradle, hardly daring to blink. Their baby boy, only 1 month old today, was sleeping so peacefully that it felt like the entire house had fallen into silence just to honor him. His little hands twitched now and then, fingers curling, as if grasping dreams too delicate for the waking world. His breathing rose and fell in slow, steady rhythms, and both his parents watched him with a tenderness so deep it made their hearts ache in the best way possible. To anyone else, it might have looked like an ordinary moment, two new parents admiring their child. But for Uri and Tutu, this simple scene meant everything. It was the end of countless battles and the beginning of something fragile but full of hope. Every hardship they had endured, every fear they carried, every night they had lain awake wondering if happiness would ever come. All of it led to this, to him, to their baby boy. The house felt different now, softer, warmer, as if the presence of this tiny little human had breathed new life into every corner. Even the shadows seemed gentler, losing their old heaviness. For the first time in a long while, neither Uri nor Tutu felt like they were fighting against something. They were simply living, simply being, and that peace alone felt like a miracle. Then came a quiet knock. The door opened slowly as Ms. Lan stepped inside, carrying a tray of traditional celebration cakes. The sweet aroma filled the room instantly, reminding everyone of family gatherings, blessings, and traditions passed lovingly from one generation to the next. She paused when she reached the crib, her eyes softening with a mixture of pride, joy, and overwhelming emotion. A look only mothers who have endured everything for their children could truly understand. She approached Tutu first, lightly placing a hand on her shoulder. "Seeing you this happy," she murmured, voice trembling just slightly, "finally lets my heart rest." Her words didn't sound rehearsed or ceremonial. They spilled out naturally, raw with sincerity. For years, Ms. Lan had watched her daughter endure heartbreak, uncertainty, and fear. She had wanted to protect her, but couldn't always shield her from the world. Now, as she stood beside her grown daughter, now a mother herself, she felt a sense of relief she had been waiting for far too long. "May your family always stay safe and healthy," she added, gently brushing her fingers against the baby's blanket. Tutu felt her chest tighten as emotion welled up. She wasn't someone who cried easily, but something about her mother's blessing made her throat warm. She leaned into the touch, letting herself feel the comfort she had missed for so long. Uri bowed his head respectfully, offering a small but grateful smile. He had grown close to Ms. Lan over time, developing a quiet admiration for her strength. She was more than just his mother-in-law. She had become someone he trusted, someone who had accepted him even when life around them was falling apart. Before anyone could say more, footsteps echoed lightly down the hallway, Uri's mother entered the room with a soft smile, balancing a tiny silver bracelet in her hands. The bracelet shimmered faintly under the warm light, delicate but crafted with care, its surface engraved with the traditional patterns passed down in her family. She moved toward the cradle with quiet reverence, her gaze tender and filled with memories of when Uri was this small. "My sweet grandson," she whispered, leaning down to look more closely at the baby's sleeping face. "May you grow up strong, just like your father." Her voice trembled with pride as she turned to Uri. Her eyes softened, holding a mix of nostalgia and admiration. "You've become a man I'm proud of, more than you know." Uri tried to laugh it off, but emotion tugged at him. His throat tightened. He reached up and rubbed the back of his neck, as if that might hide the faint shine in his eyes. Tu noticed. Of course she did. She reached for his hand and intertwined her fingers with his, squeezing gently. She didn't say anything, but that single gesture was enough. It grounded him, reminding him he wasn't alone and would never be again. With both mothers in the room, the atmosphere shifted into something lively, warm, and full of gentle noise. They began chatting softly, sharing stories, teasing one another, and exchanging old traditions about blessing newborns. The soft laughter that filled the house felt like sunlight, gentle, warm, healing. Uri slipped an arm around Tutu's waist and leaned in toward her. "We've survived so many storms," he whispered softly, as if the words were meant only for her. "But moments like this, they make everything worth it." She rested her head on his shoulder, letting the comfort of his presence wash over her. When she looked down at their baby boy, she felt a kind of peace she had once believed she would never find again. It wasn't the loud, triumphant kind of happiness people wrote stories about. It was quieter, steady, warm, and safe. The kind of happiness that grows slowly, roots deeply, and stays. Both mothers hovered lovingly around the baby, occasionally arguing playfully about whose turn it was to hold him, or which traditional name he should be called at home. Their voices blended with the soft hum of the room, creating an atmosphere that felt almost sacred. As Uri and Tutu stood there, surrounded by love, tradition, and the people who had supported them through their darkest days, they realized something profound. They were no longer fighting for a chance at happiness. They had it. They were living it, breathing it, holding it. Under the gentle glow of the room, their little family felt whole. It was a kind of happiness they once believed was out of reach. Yet here it was, real, warm, and theirs. The celebration continued into the afternoon, and the small house slowly filled with the quiet comfort of family. After the mothers finished arranging the offerings and placing the tiny silver bracelet on the baby's wrist, they moved to the living room to prepare tea. The soft clinking of porcelain cups created a peaceful rhythm. Something familiar, something homey. Uri stepped out to the balcony for a breath of fresh air, and Tutu followed him a moment later. The air outside was cool, carrying the scent of the nearby jasmine plants she had grown months earlier. She watched her husband lean against the railing, shoulders finally relaxed, eyes reflecting the warm glow of the sun. "You look happy," she said softly. Uri turned to her with a small, genuine smile. "I am. Happier than I've ever been." Tutu walked over and rested her hands on his arm. "You deserve this. We both do." They stood there for a moment, letting the breeze brush past them, letting the quiet speak for them. After everything they had been through, the misunderstandings, the fear, the nights spent worrying about the future, today felt like a closing chapter and a gentle beginning. Inside, the mothers' voices drifted lightly into the air as they chatted about childcare, old traditions, and the silly things Uri did when he was a baby. Uri could hear them and shook his head, laughing under his breath. "She's exposing me," he joked. "Oh, I love it," Tutu teased. "I'm collecting all the stories." He nudged her playfully, and for the first time in a long time, their laughter carried a softness untouched by stress or fear. Then the baby's cry echoed from the bedroom, soft but urgent. Instinctively, both parents turned. Uri stepped ahead but stopped when he saw Tutu already moving, her steps light but full of purpose. In the nursery, the baby wriggled, tiny face scrunched in discomfort. Tutu carefully lifted him into her arms and swayed slowly, whispering little nothings that made Uri's heart warm from the doorway. "You're a natural," he said softly. She glanced at him with a shy smile. "I just love him, more than I thought I could love anything." Uri walked over and placed his hand gently on their son's back, feeling the warmth of the tiny body through the blanket. In that moment, the world outside felt irrelevant. The noise, the past, the storms they endured, everything boiled down to this: the three of them together, breathing the same air, sharing the same heartbeat. The baby calmed quickly, eyes slowly drifting open. He stared at them, just for a second, with a peaceful, curious gaze before settling back into sleep. Uri and Tutu looked at each other, and without saying it out loud, they both felt the same thing. This was their purpose. This was their new beginning. Later, when they rejoined the mothers in the living room, the atmosphere grew lively again. Stories were shared, gentle jokes were exchanged, and plans for future celebrations were made. But underneath all the chatter, there was a quiet understanding. This family had survived storms. They had healed pieces of themselves they once believed were broken. And now, finally, they were stepping into a chapter filled with light. As evening approached, Uri wrapped an arm around Tutu's shoulders and pulled her close. Their baby slept nearby in his cradle, the silver bracelet catching the last soft rays of the day. Uri whispered, "No matter what happens next, we'll face it together." And Tutu answered with a smile that held every promise of their future. Together. In this touching chapter of Uri and Tutu's story, the couple celebrates their baby boy's 1-month milestone, marking a new beginning after enduring countless hardships. Surrounded by love, both mothers arrive with blessings, traditional cakes, and a symbolic silver bracelet, creating an atmosphere of warmth, joy, and family connection. Uri and Tutu share quiet, heartfelt moments together, reflecting on their journey and the storms they've survived to finally reach this point of peace. As they hold their sleeping baby and watch him twitch his tiny fingers, they realize that happiness isn't always loud or dramatic. It can be steady, gentle, and deeply fulfilling. This chapter captures the beauty of healing, family bonds, and the promise of a brighter future, showing that even after the darkest times, love and togetherness can bring profound joy.